The dynamic duo known as the Holy Brothers, Marvin Etzioni and OG Discograffiti Soldier of Sound Willie Aaron, have a new album out called High in My Balloon. This remarkable album is the triumphant result of the two friends turning to music for comfort and strength after Marvin's bout with leukemia and Willie was forced to deal with the loss of his wife of 25 years to cancer. Americana Highways described it as like Brian Wilson snuck into the studio, fired up the machines, and did some work on some of the tracks not locked up. Really, the harmonies, basic tracks, songwriting, and lots of other odds and ends are that momentous. If you love the harmonies and sonic experimentation of Bookends era Simon & Garfunkel, the Beach Boys, and Beck's Circa Sea Change, you owe it to yourself to dig into the musical wonders of High in My Balloon by the Holy Brothers, available right now on Regional Records. Music's on the decline, you say? Future Prophet Records invites you to stare into the sun for as long as it takes to change your mind. Balaclava presents Love Bug, backed with this, The Count of Rat Piss Manor. That's right, this is the B-side. 2 songs, 1 session. Real people, real songs, real good. Available right now on Future Prophet Records. That's Future, Prophet Records.com. Be part of the positive revolution. Order now.
That's a lot of what I think got us Sugar back together is people love these songs. People love that band. I didn't take it for granted at the time, but I didn't have any time to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because it felt like a war. It felt like a battle. It consumed every moment of every day, both on the business level, on a personal level, and on the music side. So in that sort of give the people what they want zone, that's a lot of what Sugar 2026 is. And so far it's been, I've been having a blast because I don't have the pressure of following up, Enemy album of the year. And I have a greater appreciation for what those 3 years meant to people. So yeah, it's a bit of give the people what they want, but it's also maybe I get to enjoy it this time too.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the deep dive podcast for music obsessives that gives maniacs like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and when I was a kid, I thought I loved music. But no, that was only the beginning. I almost lost my life, and in the process, it made music a top priority in a way I'd thought was completely unimaginable. I quit my job, went all in on Discograffiti, and never looked back. And so, with 3 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about, or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Sugar! Along with our special guest, Bob Mould. Prior to barreling headfirst into the creation of Discograffiti's upcoming Husker audio documentary series, I got the opportunity to talk with Bob Mould about the resurrection of his other great power trio, Sugar. And it's not often that someone's got 2 of them in one lifetime. Here are just a few of the many things that Bob discusses with Discograffiti in this podcast. Why Sugar came to an end after a run of such massive success, the rough circumstances in Bob's life and career from which Sugar was initially born, how Copper Blue and Beaster were recorded in one great simultaneous rush, the difficulties faced and overcome by Bob, David, and Malcolm during the creation of File Under Easy Listening, Bob's favorite Sugar records in descending order, the types of music that Bob makes just for himself without thinking of releasing, the closure he was able to reach with Husker Du bandmate Grant Hart at the end of his life, and the 2 records that Bob claims are the standard bearers, against which he can't help but compare everything that he makes. Coming up, we've got incredible deep dive audio documentary series on Quicksilver Messenger service with Lenny Kaye and David Freiberg, an interview with Richard Lloyd, and an audio documentary series on Punk Progenitors Television, Bob Mould on Sugar, and a Husker Du audio documentary series, Sonic Boom and Panda Bear on their new album, A Question of When, The Sundays, Ariel Pink, Graham Nash's turbulent mid-70s, and a hell of a lot more. So don't miss out. Head over to patreon.com/discograffiti and join up right now as a free member. And away we go then! From the moment little 14-year-old me pressed play on my cassette tape of Candy Apple Grey and was downright assaulted by the hissing face blast of Crystal, I became a dyed-in-the-wool lifelong fan of this man's music. Where he goes, I go, period. From Savage Young Do to Here We Go Crazy, across a span of 45 plus years, there's been literally nothing he's ever released that I haven't both procured and either liked or fallen in love with, which is ludicrously rare, especially for an opinionated asshole like me. He started off in Husker Du, about whom, as many of you already know, I am currently preparing an audio documentary series, and for which I consider this interview an implied audition for today's guest's involvement. I'm currently taking voluminous notes on both the Husker Du bio and this man's rabid page-turner of an autobiography, See a Little Light. His short-lived band Sugar, which he fronted during the first half of the 90s, was his second and to date only other power trio besides the Huskers. Bassist David Barb and drummer Malcolm Travis both signed on under the auspices of helping to create his third solo album, but then organically mutated into an honest-to-goodness unit, christened in an Athens, Georgia Waffle House, when today's guest eyeballed an errant sugar packet on the table. Fate's a funny thing, so thank God he wasn't zoning out on the Tapatio. Lads and ladies out there in the treble-heavy reaches of Discograffiti'ville, will you please eliminate your bottom end, but keep a close eye on the bottom line? It's the numbers man from Malone, who in the early 90s, to our collective sonic benefit, opted not to go it alone, Bob Mould!
Hey, David, you are like the ultimate hype man. I've never had such an involved intro. Thank you for all that, and thanks to all of your listeners. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I could not possibly be doing any better. I'm just trying to be your personal Don King here.
Wow, that was a big sell.
You always do live up to it. And just to let you know about that audio documentary thing, 2 things. First of all, you'll be in good company. Mike Watt's done it. Graham Nash, who I know you're a big Hollies fan, is currently doing one on literally everything he's ever recorded. Richard Lloyd, Jorma Kaukonen, Tom Morello, Michelle Phillips, even John Wurster. And second, I'm doing a massive amount of work on it. It's going to be a multiple episode series. So 43 minutes from now, I'll give you my info. And if you've had a good time today, please reach out. Okay.
That's incredible. Thank you.
No problem. So, okay, I've got a whole lot to ask in 45 minutes. So if you don't mind, I'm going to talk real fast as a tip of the hat to Land Speed Record. Okay.
All right.
Let's start at the end like Raging Bull. Sugar's final show of its initial run was in Japan in January 95. Since Sugar was and still is the most successful band of your entire career, why break it up after only 3 years, especially since everything you guys did was incredible, and also conversely, what prompted the reunion?
Well, to go back to, I guess, the beginning of, getting together with David and Malcolm at the top of 1992, to rehearse in Athens, Georgia, the 30 songs that became Copper, Blue, and Beaster, and then coming back in early 94 to do the recording for what became File Under Easy Listening. The 3 of us spent a lot of time working on the record in Atlanta. Wasn't really happy with the results. We reconvened in Austin, Texas. And then the album Fuel came out in September 94. We started touring pretty heavily. And at that point, David Barbie, the bass player in Sugar, had gone, in the course of 2 years from being a new dad who signed on for this project to, a dad, with a growing family. David really wanted to take time away to be a good dad, and no one can ever argue with something like that. He brought it to me and I said, I understand. I'm pretty beat up as well. Let's get through the commitments we have. And the final commitment that we had was Sendai, Japan, in the middle of January in '95. Sugar was done as an active touring band and recording band at that point. And, fast forward to 2024, people started showing interest in Sugar. We started getting a few inquiries from promoters and business people. And I think fans were always interested.
Yeah.
So we reconvened in October of 24 to see if there was any there. We being David, Malcolm, Travis, the drummer, and myself. We got together and played and said, no, that wasn't too bad. Let's see if we can get this back on track for at least a few shows. And we just started to endeavor in that direction.
It's funny. I was a college DJ in Boston in 1990, and I was at a very small press conference that Kurt Rolski was doing. He opened up for you for the Black Sheets of Rain tour, and I took a picture of you. I just walked by you, and for whatever reason, I might have caught you at a bad moment. There was kind of a glower. It's actually the perfect Bob Mould expression. But looking back now and knowing, back then, you're in your early 30s, you walked away from your manager, Linda Clark, your record deal with Virgin, and your band of awesome but pricey session musicians, and returned to your DIY roots, playing solo shows and slogging it out on your lonesome. Not in retrospect, but at that time, was going back to square one exciting or scary? I mean, it's not like you hadn't already paid your dues 1,000 times over.
Yeah, so in early '91, after the touring for Black Sheets of Rain, the second record for Virgin, with Tony Maimone on bass, the late Anton Fear on drums, you mentioned Linda Clark and Virgin Records. Yeah, things didn't go as well as everybody had hoped. Financially, I was, pretty broke, and decided to start over, and started working with a new attorney, Josh Greer, sort of young, hungry attorney in New York at the time. I got out and spent the majority of 1991 touring North America, touring in Europe, working out songs as I was writing them. Any given month would be a couple weeks in Brooklyn writing, and then getting in a car and going out and doing 12 shows and trying out the songs I'd just written. So, it was out of necessity. It was out of, I need to pay the bills. I need to keep my career going. And it was a pretty exciting year.
You have a crazy discipline, like one that I've always looked up to. But were you scared at the time? I mean, you had put in so much groundwork.
No, it was just, I think the prospect of a fresh start was exciting. When I was starting from zero, it could only get better, right?
Right. So what is your relationship with Black Sheets of Rain? I mean, going back now, I just listened to it right before this interview. It's interesting because it's kind of like if things had gone well with Black Sheets of Rain, there might not be a Sugar, right?
Correct. So, the first solo record, Workbook, came out in May of '89, and it was a quieter record. It was a little more delicate.
Your Fairport Convention record.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, in hindsight, it sure looks that way. But I, rounded up, Tony and Anton to work on the record, and when we went out and played the material live, it got louder, it got heavier. And that informed the writing of Black Sheets of Rain. We made that record, a lot of it at Power Station in New York, so it had, a gigantic, the sound of it sonically was huge. And I love the record. I think it's a wonderful record. It maybe it was just in the marketplace. It's interesting. I remember after leaving Virgin, I ran into one of the folks at the radio department in Virgin in '91. at one of the solo shows that we're talking about, and he came up and said, God, it's just, this business, just a matter of timing, Black Sheets of Rain, if that had come out, 6 months later, you might be Pearl Jam. And it was like,
Right.
it was like the most curious statement I'd heard. I was like sort of flattered and like bump fuzzled at the same time. But I think it was meant well, but I was just sort of like, wow, okay, well, I'm on to these new songs that, are a little bit poppier and a little brighter. There's still a lot of questioning and darkness in the stories, but sonically a little bit lighter and a little more fun. So yeah, Black Sheets of Rain was a great record, but I love All My Kids.
Yeah. I mean, there's a very different feel to it. Almost like if you took Too Far Down and gave it a heavy cavernous feel to it and stretched it out to an hour. That's what it would feel like. It is very bleak.
Well, it was an interesting time in my life. Not, if Workbook was a record made in the ashes of Husker Du, Black Sheets of Rain was a record that was informed by the ashes of a relationship that I put 6 years into, personal relationship I put 6 years into that disintegrated, and that's I think that informs the record. I look back at that time in culture. Now we've got George Bush the Elder, we've got sort of a lot of ecological disaster happening around us, which has not gotten any better over time. So those are a couple of the key themes of the record, and again, the heaviness of the touring with Tony and Anton, and the loudness, and those are the elements that made that record.
Yeah. Now, were there specific PTSD issues from Husker Du that gave you reservations about following your instincts and making a band out of Sugar, regardless of Malcolm and David's sunny dispositions?
Nah, it just sort of happened. It wasn't a plan, and it wasn't anything that I objected to over breakfast.
Yeah. So, you had talked about during rehearsals, it became clear to you that this wasn't solo album number 3. It was a band. But do you remember, was there a specific moment or a series of moments where it was clear to you?
Well, you mentioned the Waffle House story, which is where everything, no pun intended, crystallized. We were 3 weeks into learning these 30 songs, just prior to recording them, and to get asked to do a live show at the 40 Watt Club, that was not on the menu. So when we said, sure, why not? Then the next question is, well, should we give this a band name? And we came up with the name Sugar. And, there was no specific thought about it before that moment. I was open to whatever. The focus in my mind was, we got all these songs to learn, and we got to get really good really fast.
Yeah.
So it wasn't there was no, I don't think day 13 was the day I thought, oh, maybe this could be a band. It was just feeling more punk rock.
Right.
We're in the basement of a tire shop, staying at a dodgy motel, eating at Waffle House. That's very different than, some of the environments I would find myself in on tour with Anton and Tony, where it was a little higher demands and higher salaries and that kind of stuff. It was like, oh, I remember this old way.
It seems like the grit eternally energizes you.
Good. Having to make a living is always a good motivator. I think a lot of it is the people you're working with, and sort of what expectations are. And, if it's just sort of like, let's get in a room and do this, there's a little bit of hardship there, but it's actually sort of quite easy. Just grab an amp and start playing.
Now, you would mention that 40 Watt Club show in Athens, and I know during that performance, there was an instrumental suite that was, an as yet undefined version of Beaster, with you adding in some lyrical placeholders to kind of fill it in. And Beaster was this amorphous thing for some time before the phone call that you had with Kevin that I'd like to ask you more about. Were you at any point becoming concerned that it wasn't going to reveal its actual shape to you in time to hit the studio?
No, I mean the music was set, so that was half the battle. You mentioned the word sort of coming in a rush, just sort of a manic rush during the sessions when I'm up in Massachusetts. And yeah, I mean, I don't remember, the whole time and place and setting of, words spoken on a call or calls not made. But now I was pretty manic in the studio, and it didn't, just sort of all in a flash. Sort of these images were coming to me, and started scrambling and writing words, and a little bit of it was being up against the clock. And sometimes you just got to get the work done, and all a bit of a blur. But man, what a crazy record Beaster ended up being.
It's so good.
Well, thank you. And just I think there was I sort of had I think pinned it toward religion. Even at that first 40-watt show, I remember JC Otto, the title and the sort of barking the chorus as we know it now. But no, that's a wild record. That's a bit of a fever dream kind of record.
It's perfect. I love, first of all, the length is perfect. The title is perfect. And then my favorite thing about it is Walking Away, this celestial church organ wrap up. And as a resolution, it's so beautifully conceived. It's literally perfect. Was Beaster always intended to have a release valve outro to temper the heaviosity to it? Or was it a late in the game addition to kind of, to put a pin in the balloon of the heaviness before?
I mean, it's pretty much it's a circular cycle. I mean, come around to Walking Away, and the first piece is comparable. It's done with heavy guitars, but it's again just sort of a nice way to bring people into what's to come.
Did you turn that into Panama City Hotel?
No,
it sounds like isn't it a similar chord sequence with Come Around?
Very similar tempo, very similar chord structure, and that's why on this tour we do Come Around, and we dropped Panama City.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't need two of the same right away.
Yeah. Now, in my estimation, I think you guys got better and better as you went along, which is why I was bummed when you broke up. But to you personally, how would you rate Copper Blue, Beaster, and File Under Easy Listening in descending order from favorite to least favorite?
Well, I mean, Copper Blue was the closest to a perfect record that I think I've ever made. I think it's the strength of the songwriting. I think it's how hard the three of us leaned into learning the material and learning how to play together and executing the ideas that were there. Beaster, Copper Blue, Beaster are sort of yoked together because they were the same session, so to speak. Again, Beaster, I thought was really strong music, but did not have definitive words that all came to me. Fuel is interesting. Again,
that one gets short shrift as far as I'm concerned. I think it's underrated.
Well, there's a lot of things I can point to that made that one a challenge. One was not having enough time to write, and that's on me. I, got myself booked with production work in late '93 and was rushing to write. I felt the pressure of the success at Copper Blue and Beaster was leaning a little bit on me.
To me, none of that shows. None of it.
Yeah, but I appreciate that. The first thing was I felt like I was up against it a little bit. The second thing was putting myself in producer's seat and putting David in engineer seat. And then we put Malcolm out in a cold drum room. He was having a lot of trouble in the room. The three of, that's like three people trying to do the job of what should have been 4 or 5 people in the studio in Atlanta. And that month was difficult and a bit of a waste.
Didn't you actually reverse the workflow where you lay down all your tracks first, then the bass, then the drums, which is the opposite of Copper Blue?
Yeah, Copper Blue, Beaster, we did drums first, then bass, then my stuff. And we tried to do the same thing in Atlanta for that month where nothing was going particularly well.
And you erased the master tapes, right?
Erased the masters, and then I went back to Austin, Texas, where I was living at that time, got together with an engineer named Jim Wilson. He was a friend of mine. And I built the record backwards, where I did all of my stuff to a click track. And then David came in and did his stuff to a click track, and then Malcolm came in. And instead of a month of looking for a sound in a warehouse room, we got Malcolm got his drums done in a day and a half.
But isn't that harder, though? Isn't that technically a lot harder to do it that way?
Nope. Because I mean, for Malcolm's seat, he's hearing everything around him with a click track, and it's like, oh, these are my parts. I play this, as opposed to hearing nothing but a click track and building his parts from rehearsal memory. So there was so I think that elongated recording process was a bit of a challenge. And I think the last thing to me that makes a story, I guess, about the record is, there were 3 distinct packs of songs. There were the things that became side 1, which were a continuation of what Sugar sounded like. There was side 2, which had 3 much quieter songs in a way.
Yeah.
Panama City, Believe What You're Saying, and Explode and Make Up, which, I'd been in Austin for about a year at that point and was, really vibing on the local scene and more of the Americana feel of the music in Austin. So that became side 2. And then there were the songs that didn't make the album, which were, in hindsight, pretty interesting variation of the Copper Blue Beaster style. Songs like And You Tell Me or Mind as an Island or Going Home. And it's funny because if you take those 3 packs, I chose 2 to be the album, and the 3rd pack sat as B-sides. The fun of the Fuel box set is if you start interchanging all of that stuff, you can see where, I think my choice as to what the album would be, that was a choice. But if I had made other choices, that album could have been completely different. So it's just funny in retrospect for me to look at it and go, wow, that's where, having too many songs and making choices gets you an end result that could have been completely different, just even from those Austin sessions.
By the way, I'm not an A&R man, but Needle Hits E is the least likely B-side I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, we have it in the set now. Yes.
Okay, good. I mean, that is just a classic. And it's also one of your best vocals. There's a yearning in your vocal. There's one moment especially that just gets me every time.
The Death and Desperation.
Yeah. What a song, man. And also, I've always seen Your Favorite Thing as the platonic ideal of a pop song. I think
it's a good one.
The perfect Sugar song to me.
It's a good one. It follows the classic formula pretty well. It's nice. I mean, it's funny with Fuel. There's a lot of cool songs in there. I simplified my lyrics down so much on that one as well.
I mean, you go in descending order then. So Copper Blue is number 1, then Beaster, then Fuel.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I would go in reverse. I mean, only because Copper Blue gets all the love, and there's nothing I don't love about all of the records. But Fuel, I come back to that one more than the others for some strange, whatever reason, it calls to me more.
That's great to hear. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, I mean, I love them all, but I just think that the consistency of Copper Blue is hard to. That's like just song after song. It's really, I'm very grateful to get a record like that in my lifetime, where it's just one after the other and it just doesn't let up. And
now you've talked about how special Hoover Dam is to you for good reason, about how it ties up all of the same 60s touchstones that gets me into this nice, neat package. So instead of folding 60s tropes into a guitar-based Bob Mould record, have you ever considered just going all the way and doing your own Ogden's Nut Gone Flake, SF Sorrow Smile kind of thing that's transparently in thrall to the sonic style of that era?
What, like more of a folky kind of thing? Or?
Well, I mean, just instead of filtering it through Bob Mould, not to recreate something like that, but to do your rendition of that without making it as guitar-based as you normally might do.
Boy, at this late date now.
Really? I think you would do something incredible. I really do.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've tried, I think after Sugar, I went in a couple different directions, just looking for different ways to get songs across.
Electronic music.
Yeah, well, in '96, doing, just completely self-contained, high definition lo-fi songwriting and style, and then yeah, the modulate loud bomb, that era, the DJing
Yeah.
era, sort of keeping the electronics involved through the aughts, and then sort of phasing back towards, guitar bass drums. Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I think in the wake of Sugar, there was a stretch there where I was really outside my traditional comfort zone, and I had a great time with it. And songwriting was good, but some of the records I think could have been a little bit stronger, just on as I'm speaking as the producer, not as the songwriter.
Right, right. I mean, I go where you go, but I'm just curious. Do you make music for yourself and not release it? Because it seems like you have a lot of different styles. I know that the last Husker record that was never made, you were thinking about bringing in horns and strings. There's a lot of parts to you that you're obviously not entertaining at all times.
Yeah, I have a stack of stuff that people haven't heard that's, that is different. I mean, trying to, write like, longer, almost like classical pieces, where, just like different movements and suites and things. I got on a kick like that for a while, didn't stay there. You mentioned horns and strings. Workbook, cello is so integral to the presentation of those songs. I think during the electronic period, I was able to create synthesized versions of things with horns and, beats and stuff that I hadn't focused on much before that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of unheard stuff. Some of it should stay unheard, and some of it's pretty cool. But
yeah,
I used to write wider than I do now.
How so?
Well, just again, all those different, just looking at it like, let me try to do like a 12-minute classical piece that goes through 4 or 5 different movements, or let me try some really sparse acoustic stuff with electronic beats. I was sort of, I think when I was younger, could get a little bit further away from the center, and again, with mixed results. I think as I get older, I sort of just keep drilling deeper into what I think I'm good at, and I think also what people like in my work.
I think more the latter, I would assume, because I think at a base level, foundationally, that you're competent in multiple different areas. But, if you're rewarded for doing a certain thing over and over again, obviously you're going to stay in that lane.
Yeah, and I think over time too. I mean, I'm coming into like 47 years of this publicly. It's I've always tried to challenge myself and try to challenge people, especially early on. Tried to never really thought about giving the people what they want, and it's funny as people stay with and people love the work, and I can see what they enjoy in the work. And there's been times where it's in my mind it's like, well fuck it, why give people what they like, and it's not like I started that at 29. I was like, only in the past couple of years I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of what I think got us Sugar back together. Is people love these songs. People love that band. I didn't take it for granted at the time, but I didn't have any time to enjoy it.
Yeah, because
it felt like a war. It felt like a battle. It consumed every moment of every day, both on the business level, on a personal level, and on the music side. And so in that sort of give the people what they want zone, that's a lot of what Sugar 2026 is. And so far it's been, I've been having a blast because I don't have the pressure of following up Enemy album of the year, and I don't have the a 100% office workload. I've got management now who take a lot of that off of my plate, so I have a little free time now, and I have a greater appreciation for what those 3 years meant to people. So yeah, it's a bit of give the people what they want, but it's also maybe I get to enjoy it this time too.
You deserve it, and I think honestly, you're longtime fans without having asked each and every one of them. Everyone knows how intense you are. And in fact, my friends and I, back in 1989, when Workbook came out, we all were working on our Rich Little impressions because of your singing style and because you're so intense. So we would sing about like these mundane activities like wishing well, I'm ironing my clothes.
Oh my goodness.
And people, I think your fans who've been with you for decades, they just want to see you happy. The guy who wrote Too Far Down and Hardly Getting Over It, they want to see you enjoying yourself. So it's interesting, giving the people what they want. Something tells me that's whatever it is that you want. And that's what we would want for you, honestly.
Oh, that's a nice way of looking at it. It's just, the world moves us to places, right? And, with 2026 with Sugar and trying to, right a couple things that maybe went wrong, there's a bit of that for all of us. The first iteration of Sugar sort of dissolved in a strange way. I take a lot of responsibility for not handling that really well. Never been great about ending working relationships or projects. Don't ask me why, it just is. Yeah. I try to get better at it, but so part of it is trying to amend things that were left in a strange state. I think, everything, again, the interest from, people professionally and always from fans, it's hard to, I use the angry me I could turn my back on that. But at this, at my advanced age and, having a lot more wisdom about my work and, the finite time we all have, I go, well, this is the time to do this.
Speaking of ending things, I think about that picture that came out, right toward the end of Grant Hart's life when you came to see him. Did it provide any closure for you? I mean, I know there had been so many years of water under the bridge, so it couldn't have possibly been everything that you might have needed it to be, but did you bring anything away from that where you felt at peace with some of that closure?
Absolutely.
Good.
No, Grant and I got together for a weekend in Chicago. The photo was as we were saying goodbye to get on our respective flights to go back to our respective homes, and we had a wonderful weekend. And it's a funny thing. There was clearly public acrimony. A lot of words were thrown around. A lot of things get said in the heat of whatever, feeling upset about things or, promoting new records. I mean, this is a weird business, but to me, to get time with Grant, and we went through a lot of things, and it's funny. It was never quite as bad as I think people wanted to think it was.
I didn't want to think it was. I mean, you guys propelled each other to such levels of excellence. It's insane. Yep. It's insane.
Yeah. The band. I mean, Husker Du was a machine that is just a pretty emotional thing for all of us. We just tried to keep it going forward, and it ran out of gas, and then all the intervening years. Grant and I were always in touch on business stuff. I don't remember ever being terribly angry about stuff. It was just sort of like I wanted to keep moving forward, and Grant kept moving forward, and people, the music business loves a good breakup story. And sometimes it's better to just let music people say what they're going to say and fill in the stories. I don't know. Is that like something I always worry about? Confabulation. That idea. Now that we have a government that exists on confabulation, sometimes I'm like, am I confabulating? Are other people confabulating? Is that real? Is that tiny parcel of gray space? Is that actually what happened there? But at the end of the day, all with Grant and I, all ends well.
That's very good to hear. It really is. Now, what were the times throughout your career where you put far too much pressure on yourself that were probably not all that great for your mental health, regardless of the results that you obtained, especially for the guy who wrote the song Too Far Down?
But I put a lot of pressure on myself constantly. I still do. Maybe less now than I did in my 20s. I think as time has gone on, I've tried to let go of, I don't know, whatever the perfectionism or the, I mean, it's a personality trait that is, I
It
think
has served you, obviously.
well, it has served me, but I think so much of it, to be blunt, is growing up knowing I was queer
Hmm.
and different, and young queer people learn. We pick up a skill set that's sort of unique in a way. Just always wanting things to be absolutely perfect. Growing up in the '70s and especially in the '80s with HIV/AIDS. Learning disguises or, learning how to cope with the shame that society unfairly puts on you. I mean, all of that kind of stuff sort of builds an interesting profile for me personally. And I recognize that. And, I just could be really hard on myself. Again, a whole decade of being told that, I should be dead is not always fun. That can make you pretty angry.
Yeah.
Um, but it is what it is, right?
And your dad was it sounds like a very intense guy.
It's complicated, very
Yeah.
complicated. He did the best he could, and he had his own challenges, and I inherited some of those challenges, and I was able to let go of some of those challenges. But yeah, I mean, parents are, we love our parents. Sometimes they're perfect. Sometimes they're really hard. Sometimes they're complicated. But we don't really get a say in it, right? We
No,
just
we
gotta,
don't.
we gotta go through it and then, eventually look back and learn from it and try to get better with it.
I have about 100 more questions, but I'm going to have to
Okay.
attenuate it down to one. So,
All right.
what's the one work you've ever released that you can't help but see as the bar to which you compare all your most recently completed material?
Whew. It's a toss up between Workbook, which was part emancipation, part utter what do I do with myself, and it turned out so great. And then something like Copper Blue, which was me being forced to really focus in on songwriting and focus in on presenting work in an unfinished state, just with voice and guitar. And any time that I do work where it's presented in progress with voice and guitar, that's to me is always the true test of the song.
Right.
Because you can put together a crack band and you can get the best producers and all that, and you can manipulate things into a perfect state. But to go on a stage with a voice and a guitar with a song that nobody's heard, and at the end of those 3 or 4 minutes, I can just sort of tip my head up and look out, and I can quickly sense, is this song connecting?
Right.
So that's, I think, that period in '91 that got us to Copper Blue. That's a high bar, because that process is a real challenge, and to get the right results and to get the acclaim, and again to see how much it means to people, that's a high bar to get over.
I love that Workbook
after
is part of
time.
that, though. What's that?
Yeah, time after time, that's a high bar, and it is
Yeah.
great that those two, it's a toss up.
Workbook means a lot to me. So Heartbreak is Stranger is one of your greatest songs you've ever written, I think.
Oh, thank you. If not for that completely bizarre guitar tuning that requires its own unique guitar, I would play it more often. It's a song that I have tried to transpose, physically in different tunings, and
It's a great one, man.
thank you. It's a good,
Listen, I know you have a heart out, but to whatever extent, will you please take part in, I'm not asking for a ton of your time, but this Husker audio documentary series I'm doing, I'm putting in a ton of time into this. If you could take part in just a little bit of time, I would be eternally grateful.
yeah. Shoot more of the details to Jim, and we'll look at it and try to find a time for that which sounds like a fairly deep dive.
It is a very deep dive. I mean, mean, right now I have a couple hundred pages of notes. It's going to be many, many episodes, just like I'm doing with television right now and Richard Lloyd. I'm hoping to get Greg involved as well. I just reached out to him, but Jim and I have been in pretty consistent touch. I'll be in touch with him about specifics.
Great. That'd be the easiest. Jim will keep track of it as I get into busy season here. So
he is great, and you, my friend, are an absolute class act. And in direct contrast to the glower you gave me in 1990, I definitely sense your inner peace that you've gained since then.
Getting there. Thank you for the kind words, David. And this has been a super fun chat.
For me too. Thank you so much, Bob, for your time.
Thanks. Have a great day.
All right. That about does it. For over 4 years now, Discograffiti's Friday episodes have been completely free, and it's been my pleasure. But for a variety of reasons, Discograffiti's now moved to the subscription-based Patreon as our primary platform. Moving forward, our public stream will feature a teaser of the Friday episode and a Tuesday teaser of the bonus episode, and that's all. But here's the good news. Only $5 a month will get you the weekly Friday podcast to which you become accustomed. That's it. It's a no-brainer at just $1 an episode. And just that little bit will be what's required to help the show survive. To sweeten the pot, you'll also get regular installments of the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's Rudy Fishman's podcast within a podcast featuring our Patreon members as guests. You'll also get access to over 100 back episodes of that show. The $10 Lieutenant tier gets you all that, plus access to half of the Patreon archive. That's hundreds of additional episodes, plus copies of my personal show notes, which include invaluable research, star ratings, and reviews. But the $20 major tier is the place to be, unless you can support the show on even higher tiers, which, if you can afford it, offers substantial perks, including advertising on the show and selecting the guests and artists I cover. With the major tier and above, you get it all. The Monday bonus episodes, aka the best stuff, the Friday show, the Soldiers of Sound podcast, plus access to the entire archive. That's many hundreds of Patreon episodes, an absolutely endless barrage of music entertainment, including 50 episodes of The Private Press with Paul Major, Rock Cousteau, Queasy Listening, and so much more. So support the podcast that's been supporting you for years. Discograffiti's calling, and it needs you, so don't risk feeling guilty by not giving. But enough of me yapping. Go on, subscribe now. Visit patreon.com/discograffiti and find the tier that's right for you. Stay tuned, because next week brings upon us an interview with Animal Collective's Panda Bear and Sonic Boom about their incredible new album, A Question of When. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then, come Monday, the major tier gets a very special treat. Monday's bonus episode is part 20 of Feed Your Head, and it covers the ludicrously eventful 20-month period from Volunteer's November 1969 release to the protracted recording sessions for Bark, which concluded in July 1971 in the style of an audiobook. There will be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Tuesday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful son Mason, Bob Mould, Jim Merlis, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, and access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the amniotically dark and cozy psychedelic underworld of the 60s and 70s is to leap headfirst into our Spirit series. That's episodes 241 to 249, the Lenny Waronker interview, that's 244 and 245, our ongoing Graham Nash interview in which he talks about everything he's ever done, our 13-episode Moby Grape series featuring interviews with Peter Lewis, Don Stevenson, and Bob Mosley. That's episodes 208 to 214. The Beatles' Pete Best. That's episode 188. Our free design interview with all the Dedrick siblings. That's 160 to 162. Our Mamas and Papas series featuring my 16-hour Michelle Phillips interview, which she says is the best interview she's ever done. That's episodes 141 to 159. My 13-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander about everything the association ever did. That's 109 to 113. My interview with Vashti Bunyan about her life and everything she's ever recorded, that's 103 to 104. My interview with Os Mutants Sergio Diaz, that's 86 and 87. Lou Barlow on the Zombies, that's 59 and 60. Foxygen's Jonathan Rado on Todd Rundgren, that's 37 and 40. Anthony Fantano on the Velvet Underground, that's 32 and 33. Bob Forrest on the band, that's 25 and 27. Andrew Sandoval on the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy on David Axelrod, that's episode 17. And Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, August 21st, we're coming at you with an interview with Panda Bear and Sonic Boom about their brand new record, A Question of When. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!